Hello, everybody. Welcome. So today's topic is something I usually pick these topics from people asking these questions via Instagram or via Facebook or even in our client calls inside HYR. Questions that come up repeatedly. We usually sort of notice that. I should say my team notices that. I'm not very good at noticing those things, but I ask my team to please keep tab on that and try to take those questions and put it in a separate document so we can answer them either inside HYR or sometimes for our general audience like this. So this question actually came up in a couple of different places and people word it differently, but the gist of it was, what if I love or like my spouse, but I'm not in love with them anymore? What do I do? And a variation of this I have heard, I mean, we've all heard this from our own hearts now and then, from friends and family members, right? This is something that is a pretty common question based on, depending on where you live in the world. It's less of a question that I've heard come up from where I'm from, right? I'm from India. In southern India, very rarely have I heard someone ask that particular question. So it's a cultural context as well. And I want to acknowledge that. So when we do hear it, we hear it more in, if you live in a place where there is some amount of acknowledgement of individual freedoms and growths and evolution, right? So the Western culture is a lot more, not always, but more so, thinks about individual liberties and freedoms and growth. And Eastern cultures, again, not always, more so tilt towards collective community-based living, right? So that might change in years to come, might go opposite, who knows? But right now, it tends to be, and again, we're getting, the pendulum can only swing so far and then it swings back. So even in the West, we're getting a slight swing towards more collective thinking. And the East, we're getting a slight swing towards individualized growth and meaning and evolution. So that pendulum will always be swinging, right? But the question is, there's a, how do I say? There is a presupposition inside this question. And the presupposition is that happily married couples, or not even married, even if you're just like committed, right? Happily committed couples should be in love. Happily committed couples should be in love for most of their lifetime. That rule is underlying that question. You guys see what I'm saying? You wouldn't even ask that question if we didn't have that rule underlying it. So the questions we ask are it's a hint about our own beliefs, right? I will often, I have this little notebook here. This is my journal. It's a sketch pad because I don't like lines in my journals. It's empty, but every time I finish one notebook and I get another one like this, and I ask myself questions in my journaling, because the questions that come up for me, those questions itself tells me what I am already thinking is a fact of life underneath. Okay, So when we ask, what do I do? I like my spouse, but I'm not in love with them. That question, if you look under the question, the fact that we think is so true and so obvious to everybody that it's just kind of like gravity, it is an unspoken rule, that rule that we think everybody agrees with is, if you are happily committed to someone, then you must be in love with them. Okay, and that's a useful thing to notice. Oh, I have this belief. How interesting. Right? It's not right or wrong. You can choose your beliefs. What is a problem is unconscious beliefs. Unconscious beliefs tend to rule our lives. Okay? So as long as we're making our beliefs, our own beliefs conscious, it's like looking in our own rear view mirror, right? Make your own beliefs conscious, then you can decide this is not a fact of life. It is just a way to look at the world. Do I want to look at the world this way? And then you get to consciously decide whether you want to take on that belief or not. So that aside, the underlying belief now, when someone asks this question, when I have asked this question in my own life, is the idea that if we're not in love with our spouse, something is very wrong, right? Something has gone wrong. And what I want to suggest is that maybe, just maybe, nothing has gone wrong at all. Try that on. What if nothing has gone wrong at all? What if the only way to be with someone for decades is to fall in and out of love with them? What if the only way to be with the same person over a very long period of time, which itself you get to choose if you want to or not, but if you're choosing that path, what if it's entirely normal to have months, even years, where you're not in love with them? What if nothing has gone wrong? So if we took on that just examining lens, right? I'm just picking up, I'm a daughter of an ophthalmologist, so I'm going to talk sometimes in those terms. Let's say we're going to pick up that lens and put it on and see what happens. How does the world look when I choose? Because it's all a lens, right? Everything that everything that we think is through a particular lens. So what if I chose a different lens just to see? How does the world look? Okay, so I put on these lenses just for a minute, just to experiment. And this new lens is, it's entirely normal to be in and out of love with your spouse or your partner. Okay. If we were wearing that lens, then the question needs to be, how do I say, it needs to be more nuanced, right? We need more depth in the question. So we might change the question to be something like, how, right? How do I navigate a relationship when I want it to be long-term, and I know that that means that I will have periods when I'm not in love with the partner? See how there's it went from why? And I'll tell you, I've noticed in my own life that why-based questions are often a lower quality question. Okay, because it has the sense of helplessness associated with it. Why is the world like this? Why won't he do this? Why won't she act this way? It sounds like a legitimate question, right? Why? But what we're actually saying is this is the only right way to be, and you're not fitting that box. Okay. So notice that when we're taking on this lens, just for a minute to experiment, what if it makes perfect sense that there'll be long periods of time if you're with somebody for several decades, there'll be long periods of time when you're not in love with them. If you put that lens on just to experiment, then the question gets changed to how do I, not why me, to how do I navigate? This is entirely normal. How do I navigate? Okay. Okay. So now we've let go of this angst of something's missing and time is running out. I have this one life, right? Which is also a more Western concept. Again, not right or wrong. This isn't to say all Eastern ways of thinking is the right way or all, it's just different, okay? But it's the concept of, I have this one life and time is running out and I need to find my own happiness. I hear that a lot, right? In other Facebook groups, I hear people ask this question. I'm not in love with my spouse and time is running out and I deserve happiness and I need to find my own happiness. Absolutely, you deserve happiness. Every single person on this planet deserves happiness. However, happiness all the time is a fallacy. It's an illusion. Okay. Yes. And I also hear people say sometimes things like, yes, I am on my second marriage and it's amazing. Right? And my question is, maybe it is, but I want to ask you, how long have you been in the second marriage? 3 years. Well, of course it's amazing. Of course. Great. Enjoy it. But even with this person, after several decades, same question is going to arise. Because the question is not belonging to one dyad or relationship. It's a universal question. You can't run away from the question. Right? So, okay, now we ask, okay, so how? Yes. Yes, exactly, Denise. Exactly. In and out of love, in love, right? That feeling of in love is going to come and go. Even when it comes back later, it will have a slightly different form. Yeah. That's right. This is not to say that once you're married, you should just stay in that marriage no matter what. That's not what I'm saying. I want to be very clear. That's not what I'm saying. That's a personal choice. What I am saying is, if the decision is based on the reason that I am not in love right now, that central question will come back eventually. Even if you find the perfect, juiciest soulmate, it will still come back. Familiarity breeds contempt, right? The closer you spend time with somebody, you also get to appreciate them more, but they grate on our nerves more. They chew the wrong way, they mispronounce things, they don't have interesting things to say at parties, and it's just, they're a little bit of a disappointment, you know what I mean? They're just disappointing. So are we. But that's beside the point, right? In our heads, we're all like, we're a catch, and this other person is a bit disappointing. That's going to happen. It's going to happen with whoever we choose after that initial limerence wears off. And the initial limerence is what we're chasing with this idea of, if I'm not in love, I should go find that. You can still choose to find that, but at least be aware that you're chasing limerence, which even in the perfect next person will fade. As long as you are seeing that and you're still choosing it, at least you're doing it with your eyes open. Yeah. Physical affection too. So physical affection is chicken and egg thing, right? There are often the coupling of people often is one person wants physical affection in order to feel close. Another person wants closeness first in order to feel excited for physical affection. So it's a chicken and egg. What comes first? You're stuck, right? The physical affection person says, oh, there's so much distance. If we can just have some physical affection, then I would feel more calmer and safer, and then I would be gentler. But this other person says there's so much resentment and mistrust, I can't relax my body because that's a very vulnerable space. So you're caught in the chicken and egg. Right? So the thing to, and even in physical affection, by the way, it's a complete myth that if you're with somebody over a long period of time, that your libidos will match. And if it doesn't, that it's a problem. It's a problem. The truth is, very rarely will your libidos match. If you're with someone over a long period of time, very rarely will your libidos match. Most likely, one person will have a higher libido than the other, and that same person in another relationship might be the low libido person. Who knows? It's all relative, right? So libidos not matching or not being in love, those are all part and parcel of being in a long-term relationship. That doesn't mean we just like accept it, but it shifts from why is it like this? Why are they like this? Why me? To how. How do I navigate? Okay. So that leads me to point number 2. So the second thing then to consider, if we ask ourselves, how do I navigate this? You cannot hate or even feel apathy toward something or someone that you deeply understand. So in the beginning, when we are getting to know somebody and we have this feeling of being really close to them and feeling in love, quote unquote, what's actually happening, aside from just the neurochemicals, right, that cause this rush of feeling, aside from that, we're also letting down our walls and talking, exchanging information, ideas, right? If you think about the origins of even a close friendship, it doesn't even have to be romantic, right? A close friendship, when you first meet a good friend, you're not talking about mundane things. You're talking about ideas, right? What does freedom mean to you? Do you believe in democracy? Right? We're talking about ideas. And ideas make our relationships feel more meaningful. However, after many years with somebody, you'll notice that we're only talking about logistics. Right? Not only, but more often so, we're talking about what we don't like, right? You're not this enough or that enough, or you're saying this wrong, or you're saying this wrong the wrong way, or you're not talking to other people the right way. We're like correcting each other a lot. Or we're talking about logistics, right? So what happens is over time, the potential for feeling close to another person is always available, because it's not some magical thing. It is to get to know someone's heart. That's it. That's something that we do naturally when we're falling in love, right? But that potential is always there, because two people still have hearts and minds and thoughts and dreams and fears and longings, right? As long as you are alive, until your very last breath, you and every other person on this planet Earth will have a complicated set of longings and fears and dreams and needs and thoughts and ideas, and a whole entire, I once read in this book by Jonathan Livingston Seagull, the person who wrote Illusions, but in another one of his books had said there are 6 billion universes on planet Earth, right? Every person is an entire universe. We get a peek into that universe when we're falling in love. Okay. But that potential is always there, because there's still those two universes. The universe is expanding, contracting, and changing over time. But we lose the capacity to keep in touch with this ever-changing universe within both of us. Yeah. So when we ask a better question, how do I navigate these times? The thing to keep in mind is it's impossible for us to feel hate or even apathy towards something or someone that we deeply understand. It's impossible. When we deeply understand another person's universe, not agree, I'm not saying we have to agree with it at all, but when we deeply understand, there's no way for us to feel hatred or we only feel when we've reduced a person to 4 or 5 descriptions that we have in our mind about them. He's this, and this. That's who he is, done. She's this, and this. I know her, done. Meanwhile, both your universes are contracting and expanding, right? But you've reduced each other to a few sentences. That's why you don't have much feeling for this person other than annoyance. Not because something fundamentally, they've just become a dead piece of wood that is so disinteresting. Is because we've reduced them to a dead piece of wood in our minds with our stories about them. And so have they. Who wants to interact with a dead piece of wood? No wonder we're out of love. It's so boring. Same old shit. So when you are feeling out of love or distant, and all you can feel is some vague annoyance, you absolutely can leave that relationship, go to another relationship. If you were to find another person, and if both of you were to have that initial melding that we call falling in love, which itself is not a given, right? We might or might not find that other person. But even if we do, as long as you're aware that that will also last only a little bit of time. So then you get to make a choice, but at least you make it with your eyes open. Let's say you decide, okay, whether it's this person or that person, eventually I will have to face the question of how do I navigate these periods of time? Then you're asking a more nuanced question. And the answer is that we've lost touch with each other's universes. We only see what we've decided is the other person. They only see what they've decided is us. I would be curious, right? Again, remember, these are two universes. I don't know what it means in her universe. How does she experience it when she feels a disconnect? What does that mean? You may not even feel it, right? That's truly your reality. So we don't have to decide which is true. Am I disconnecting, or is she just making shit up because of her own trauma? Like, what is this? We don't need to decide. They're both true. So then we just get to be curious about the other person's truth. Tell me more about that. What do you mean? How do you, what is it, a signal that you get? Is it a particular time of the day? How do you feel that disconnect? And then what happens after? Right? It's like going to a new, when you go, when you're a tourist in a new place and you get a tourist guide and they're pointing out all the different parts and telling you the history, let her be the tourist guide for her experience. You don't have to agree or disagree. We're just like opening the door and going, I see. That's what happens. Okay. Then you will learn more about her nervous system. She will learn more about yours. And that is the basis of connection. Connection is not sameness. Connection is understanding and feeling understood. Okay. And number 3, right? The final thing I'll say about this is to be able to have curiosity, the thing that you will need to practice is emotional risk-taking. Okay. So as annoying as it is for us to see this person doing the thing that we've already decided is a shitty thing to do, right? They don't wake up on time in the mornings, right? We already think that's shitty. And then they don't wake up on time again. And we add it to our story about them, right? We actually don't like that story, but we still can't stop ourselves. It's sort of like you might not even like that car anymore, but you can't stop finding it in the highway. Okay. So the only way for us to, because even though it's uncomfortable, it is familiar. And human brains always want what's familiar. Human brain is made to find patterns so that we can survive the environment, right? We want to know, where's the watering hole? Where's the tiger going to be? Where is the danger? We want to map out the environment so that we don't have to keep rethinking and remapping the territory. So our brains are wired to look for familiarity, even if we don't like what we're finding. We want this ego-syntonic, it's called. Ego-syntonic is a psychological term that says whatever we think of the world, we want to find evidence. Even if we don't like that evidence, we want to find it because we'd rather feel like how I think of the world is how the world is. We want our ego to feel syntonic with the world. Because of that, whatever our ego says is the world, we will look for evidence so that we don't have to be like, huh? The world isn't making sense to how I thought it was. That's uncomfortable. Ego dystonic is uncomfortable. So whatever stories we create, we will absolutely find evidence, because that ego syntonic helps us feel like we're sane. Even if the evidence we're finding is not pleasant. It's not even helpful for the relationship. However, if we have a story, we will look for that evidence because we want to ruminate on the world making sense. Yes, this is how he is. This is how she is. Yes, it makes sense in my mind. Okay. So the only way to get out of that then is to take emotional risk, because it's risky, right? It's risky to be vulnerable rather than blaming. It's risky to ask and be curious rather than decide that you know exactly what the other person means. It's risky to give affection, not knowing if you'll get it back. See? The way out of this prison is that it's not locked. The way out is that it's actually not locked. As much as we're complaining about the prison, we are used to the prison. Okay? If I open the door, it looks dark over there. I don't know if there's even a ground over there. I don't know if I take a step, if I'll fall. That's emotional risk-taking. But without emotional risk-taking, there's no way out of this cell, right? Emotional risk-taking means that we share our feelings without expecting the other person to get it. They may not get it. They may dismiss it. They may roll their eyes. They may say, oh, not again, you and your feelings. Okay. I don't know. They might. They might actually listen. I don't know. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But there's a risk in any of us changing the narrative that has created this prison cell for us. There's an emotional risk. Because we know what will happen when we say that snippy thing. We know how they will respond, and then we'll respond, and they'll respond, and we know that whole dance. Right? But to take the emotional risk means we don't know what the dance will be, and we're so scared that it will not be what we want. And we also have this idea that if it's not what we want, then there's something wrong with the relationship, for sure. I mean, I was vulnerable, and this person did not even get it. But emotional risk-taking means that about 50% of the time, the other person will not get it. They won't respond the right way. The thing is, we don't know which 50%. So we have to take the risk. Some people can't make eye contact and be like, and what do you feel? And how were things when you were a child? It's too much for them. For some reason, the way they were raised, they're scared of it. Right? But you can still ask questions about what they are thinking about. And you can still share without expecting that the only way to be in love is if the other person magically somehow, because there's this big broad range of how much somebody might like emotional talking, but somehow we've decided that exactly the range that I'm at is where this other person should be at. If they talk more than I'd like to talk, that's an annoying, just stop it already. But if they talk less, what's wrong with you? You're emotionally stunted, right? They have to match us. Emotional risk taking says you don't have to match me. Emotional risk taking means you allow him to be who he is. You share what you want. You ask questions about other things that he does like. Then you got to find a way to share it non-hurtfully, right? So, for example, when you say or do X, I feel Y. That's different than you are Z. Okay. You need to work out more and plan more for your future. You're being lazy. That's not a useful share because it's not vulnerable. It's nothing to do with your feelings. It's just a description of what the other person is or isn't. That's not emotional risk taking. Right? Whatever it might be about, right? Let's say it's about their way of being. Yeah. Let's say when you are overwhelmed, your tone of voice gets sharper and I feel scared and anxious and distant. I'm just making this up. That's a way of being. It's not an action per se. It's somebody's way of being. But I'm still talking about what happens within me. What I'm not saying is, why are you so harsh? Notice the why is often a lower quality question. Why are you like this? They're like, I don't know, because you're like that. Okay. Then you're caught in this thing of, I'm being harsh. What about you ignoring me for 2 days? Da, 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 da. Right? So this thing about you want to avoid being hurtful before because you love them is a teeny tiny bit paternalistic. Teeny tiny bit like, whoa, you can't handle it, my little one. So I will have to make up a little bit of a story around you because you clearly cannot handle it. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Allow them to sulk. I doubt if it's, for me at least, when I've had that thought, it's more that if they get upset, I feel shitty. And I am scared of that feeling. Right? It may or may not be for you. May not be, right? But allow them. Your job is to be honest and gentle. Your job is not to baby them in that way because it's not honest. It's not, and they can sense it. They can sense that something is off. Something is not being said. And there is no possibility for deeper intimacy when we're holding a sort of a certain distance from, I can only say these things, I can't say these things because I need to protect you. It will cause a bit of resentment on the other side because they can sense it. Okay. Our job is to speak the truth, but have it be vulnerable and self revealing. Okay. It should be self revealing, not a, how do I, oh God, I don't want to hurt you, but you know, sometimes you're just way too harsh. It's not self-revealing. I don't know if the other person is too harsh or not. All I know is sometimes when there's a certain tone, I feel scared. I feel on edge. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. I'm noticing I pull away in those moments. That's self-revealing. And we're scared to go there because we don't know. We don't know how they'll receive it. We don't know if they'll even receive it, or whether they will be defensive or be angry or feel like you, maybe they will say, how could you hurt me like that? I don't know. It could be anything. But emotional risk taking still means that we speak our truth in a self-revealing way. So I'll stop here, but I invite you guys to think about these three things. Okay. Number one, what if nothing has gone wrong when you're feeling out of love and sort of blah and just annoyed? What if nothing has gone wrong? What if that is an inevitable part of this long journey, leading you to a better question of how, which leads us to understanding the other universe. You cannot hate or even feel apathy for something that you truly understand. And number three, to do that, you will have to take some emotional risk, because all of our minds are going to want to stay in the egocentric sphere of that person can only take this much, or they are this kind of person, or they are this and this and this, and they don't have capacity beyond that, or whatever else. And emotional risk is always self-revealing. This is what happens inside of me. Knowing that they may not be able to receive it, knowing that they may roll their eyes or dismiss it or even get angry, or maybe they will receive it. It's literally, we don't know. Even the good enough parent is only attuned 60 or 70% of the time. There is no such thing as a 100% attuned parent. Right? Even in the very beginnings, when all we're doing is literally being with the baby, even then we will miss 40% of the cues. We will miss it, dismiss it, maybe even get angry or find it annoying, right? Even a good parent will miss a lot of cues, which means that is not the end of the world if your partner misses your cues. We want to let go of this idea of the perfect union. The perfect union actually makes this union forever a disappointment. You will always be disappointed with the current union if we're always imagining some perfect union. Allow the other person to miss the cues or to misunderstand even your intention sometimes. We gotta all be cheerful and understand each other perfectly and move in tandem all the time. Not gonna happen. Especially if you want to be with somebody over a long period of time. Much of the time, you will not be in sync, and that is okay. That's right. That's right. That might be just exactly as it's supposed to be. Okay. So last invitation to you guys before we finish is to ask yourself, how can I take emotional risk today? How can I take a tiny, tiny emotional risk today? Not to test anybody, not to test the environment, simply to take the risk of just sharing your universe or being curious about another person, simply because it's the only way to really feel any connection in this world. Could be with a friend, right? Could be with a friend. Could be with your children. How can I take a tiny bit of emotional risk today? All right. So with that, I'll let you guys go. Thank you for spending this hour with me. I love you guys.